thing that I've kind of, all of these things are just basically my observations over the years. So this one I call the Bank of Goodwill. And so everyone has an emotional savings account with everyone else. So we all have this give and take. You have one with me, you'll have one with your staff, and as you'll see going down the road, you also establish one with specialists that you work with and really anybody else. So that's sort of the beginning of the concept. And this was a way to advance. Now, I could probably use Power, or any of you guys that use PowerPoints. What's an easier way for me to advance this slide without using my scroll? Because that's awesome for me to scroll. Fuller wants to go too many slides.
I mean, if you start the slideshow, which I think at the bottom left corner, there's like a little like projector screen button.
Yeah.
And then I think you can just either press like the space bar or like the, you know, one of the arrows to move it along.
When I do that, I've lost all you guys.
Oh.
I don't want to do that. But I definitely have the arrows there that I can move it along. So how do I get out of this back? I'll hit the escape key. Okay, we'll go back to this. I wonder if I can go up to slideshow. What are we going to talk to? Active button. No.
There should be a way to pull up all of your slides on like the left-hand side, and you can kind of just move freely between them.
Yeah. I think I had that, and I took it down. Present review. No, that's not good. All right, we'll deal with this. We'll just go through it. And hopefully my scroller will be cooperating. Nope, it's not. Okay, so back to the topic. So we've got this you know, imaginary bank account, and when you make the deposits in the bank account, and these deposits are sort of emotional deposits like favors or you know, acts of goodwill or whatever you want to call it. So basically, the more that you put in, then the more you can get back. And so, you know, if you're new, and again, you know, I want you to think of this stuff as, you know, as you guys being the boss. So, you know, if you have a new employee and they're coming to you and they are, you know, asking and asking and asking without putting anything back in, you know, that's a big negative, and that's something that I think raised a red flag for me in terms of getting along with employees and getting along with the boss. So, you know, one of the things that Cookie and Joey have heard me say before is, so I've got 100 employees, so everybody should be able to kind of command 1/100th of my employee space, brain, real estate that's devoted to employees. By the same token, let's say I've got 15 doctors, and each doctor is sort of entitled to 1/15 of my brain real estate. And that's kind of a nice way of saying that nobody is allowed to hog the boss's brain and be that much of a demanding kind of individual. Everybody deserves their share. And you know, I think this is just something that, you know, you guys can wrap your brains around, that you can relay to your staff members. So if you have somebody that's constantly asking for favors or constantly asking, you know, why do you do this or why do you do that or how can we do this, you know, you just got to gently sort of back them off a little bit so that you can pay attention to everybody else on your team. Is basically what that is. So, and the same thing is going to apply with all of your interpersonal relationships. I mean, even if it's a, you know, a marriage, right? So Zach and Morgan, I mean, you know, you guys are in the process where you're, you know, you're building goodwill with each other right now, and you know, you want to be a mutual depositor into this imaginary bank account. no one person or no one party should really be a drain on the bank account. So that's that. It's pretty simple. I think everybody gets it. But it's one of those observations that until it's pointed out, sometimes people don't understand that you're taking too much of my time, too much of my brain real estate, or too much of anybody else's. So next little topic is just controlling the mood of the workplace. So you guys have all sort of seen this. I think you've seen the way that I work, and most of the time when I'm working, I'm in a good mood, and that sets the tone for how everyone else. So one of my observations over the years is that the person with the strongest personality determines the mood of the entire workplace, and that's probably going to be you guys, but not always. So I was relating a story this morning that we had a technician at Fairfield, and she was a bit of a drama queen, and when she was in a bad mood, everybody was in a bad mood, and she was able to sort of, I don't know if it was inadvertently or intentionally, she controlled the mood of the entire place. And that's good if that person is a positive personality. It's bad if that person is sucking all the air out of the room or is, full of drama and whatever. So first thing, before you can, control the mood of everybody else, is you have to control your own moods. So, Joey, are you on here anywhere? Okay, so Joey's not here. So we'll talk about Joey a little bit.
No, I mean, just have it on mute so you don't hear the dogs barking in the back. But you can talk about it.
All right. Well, I'm going to talk okay, Joey?
What'd you say?
I'm going to talk about what happened with you when you went to Forest Park.
Oh, sure.
And what you were going through. So it's a little personal, but I think Joey's cool with it. So we had a manager at our Forest Park office a number of years ago, and it was clear that we had to let this manager go. She was changing her own time clock, even though she was, I'm not sure if she was salaried or if she was hourly, but in any event, she was falsifying her time clock records is what she was doing. We heard rumors that she had alcohol in her breath, but the most damaging thing to me, if that's not enough, was that she allowed the mood of the entire office to deteriorate to the point that it was a really negative place. And I don't know if any of you guys have ever worked in a place that's really negative, but it's really a toxic environment. And, that's a place that nobody likes to work in. Everybody gets up in the morning, they dread coming to work. And so under her leadership, Forest Park deteriorated into that sort of situation. So Joey had sort of learned management from me when we were both at Blue Ash. In the beginning, Joey would watch what I would do, and then once he saw enough of that, he would sort of take the reins and he would make a decision, handle a situation, and then he would come to me and say, how did I do? How would you handle it differently? That sort of stuff. And to me, that's sort of the best way to learn how to manage, because there's so many different variables, it's hard to make a list of them and kind of address them all until, you're actually going through there. I mean, we can do some of them, not a whole lot. So in any event, I gave Joey the task of going over to Forest Park sort of without me, and you are the new manager. And go over there and basically turn that place around. So what he did is he had a meeting, and he said, basically, Carolyn's not here anymore. I'm the new manager, and these are the rules. And this is the way things are going to go. And, in true Joey fashion, he said, if you don't like it, there's the door. Interrupt me, Joey, if I'm wrong or I'm overstepping my bounds here. So one of those individuals, who was a pretty good employee, one of those individuals sort of said something to the effect of, you don't really know what's going on with our lives. And who are you to come in here and tell us we all should be in good moods and we all should, you know, leave our problems at the door when you don't know what we're going through? Everyone here has their own individual problems and individual issues, and who are you to say that? Joe's response basically, you know, you have to leave the problems at the door. You cannot come to work with problems or drama, share them with everybody, and bring down the mood of the entire building. And that's what was going on. Everybody had problems, everybody had issues. And Carolyn, as the manager, she certainly allowed it to happen. She probably even enabled it because she had her own. Basically said, leave your problems at the door when you come to work. What Joey didn't say, and I made a point to point out to this employee, is that when they were complaining about all their little issues that they were going through, Joey's dad was dying, and nobody knew it. Well, I knew it, and Joey, of course, knew it, and he, you know, nobody knew it. And the point being that if he can deal with something that is that difficult and that emotional, then whatever, you know, babysitter problems or whatever transportation problems or whatever problems you're dealing with, they really don't compare to somebody that's, you know, losing a parent. Joey's dad, and you know, this is really hard for anybody to go through, and they had no idea. And so I sat this employee down and I said, here's what Joey's dealing with. So if he can deal with this, then I think you owe him an apology, and I think you basically need to follow his advice, or you know, we'll find somebody else to take your place. To this employee's credit, she apologized. She did a complete 180. She realized, you know, what was going on, and she turned it around and became a positive employee for quite a while after that. Not everybody else did, and so if you've read the, you know, the great book, I know it's been sitting around Springfield, and I don't know how many have read it, but, you know, they refer to, you know, putting the right people on the bus and helping some people off. So one of the things that you need to do is sort of set the mood for the workplace and draw the line as to what's acceptable and what's not. And if they cannot meet the standard, then they need to go. It's really hard to do for, you know, a new employer, but it's much worse if you let that person stay and lose a good person because of, you know, somebody else who's sucking all the air out of a workplace. So, you know, we let some people go, and the people that were cooperative and turned it around, and obviously they could stay, and so Forest Park turned around. And for those of you that have been to Forest Park, you know that that's a great place to work. It wasn't always that way. When we had this technician at Fairfield, it got to the point that I had employees coming to me telling me how negative the environment was here, and you know, what could I do about it? You know, I was spending about as much time in Fairfield as I am right now, which is hardly any, and so I wasn't there to exert any influence, and so we eventually let that technician go. And as you can imagine, everybody's moved up better. We struggled a while trying to find somebody to replace her technical skills, but her emotional skills basically cost her her job. So, let's say the first part of that is controlling your own emotions. So, you know, if you're like some of these professors that I had at Ohio State and you're throwing surgery instruments around and you're acting like a prima donna, you can pretty much expect to work in a negative atmosphere because everybody else is. I beat that to death, but I think it's worthwhile because that's a huge, huge topic. Questions? The obvious, right? Most of the stuff that I'm going to be talking about is obvious, and that's why it's hard to present. So sort of mark down somewhere in your brain that, gee, Dave is going on and on about this stuff, and this is obvious, but when you actually are running your own clinics, this is the stuff that's going to drive you crazy. With all due respect to SPIF and the P&Ls and the numbers and all that, that's all important. But working in an atmosphere of positivity is it's not as easy to do as it looks. It takes a lot of time to be able to understand it. It takes a lot of time to be able to build that culture, and it's just not easy to do. I think, Rachel, you said to me one time that, during the business of like, they all tell you, to have a positive atmosphere and a drama-free atmosphere, but they don't tell you how to do it. And frankly, nobody tells you how to do it. You either have to learn it through trial and error like I did, or, you basically learn it from me. So I'm going to try to beat this into you as much as I can, because this is really going to make the difference of whether your workday is happy or not. So when you hire, there was some talk about interviewing and when we're going to get you guys involved with the interviewing process. And Morgan and I talked a little bit because she was conducting some interviews for school, and I did some mock interviews over the weekend with Ohio State. And I think one of the most important things with interviewing and hiring for your hospitals is that there's a tendency to hire for skills. And you get all excited because this person's got experience. They work for that clinic. They work for this veterinary clinic. They know how to do this. They know how to do that. And that's actually the least important thing of all to look for. You've probably heard this before, probably even in that book, but you hire for the attitude first. Because you can't really teach attitude. You can't really being a nice person or being a positive person. You either decide yourself that's who you're going to be, or you don't. So you want to hire for those positive people, those friendly people. Springfield is a good example of that. I think everybody knows what a great group of people we have at Springfield. They don't work there because we pay them a lot of money. They work there because they have a lot of job satisfaction. And that's a great, great group of people. All experienced it. It's a small group, but probably that small group as a whole probably have the best mindset of all of the clinics. And it's probably because it is a small number and it's easier to manage. And it might have a little bit to do with most of those people were handpicked by me. And I would like to think that I have a little more experience in hiring for attitude, and then we teach the skills. So the second part of this slide is when you're training somebody, whether it's a new grad or a kennel person or whatever, it's really important to start that training as soon as they're on board, and keep it coming, because once they're there for a while, their sort of ability to be coached, or ability to be trained, or willingness to learn sort of dissipates over a period of time. So I think it's important to, get them in, get inside their head, and that's probably another thing that didn't make the slide, but you sort of get inside their head a little bit. So you want to instill the culture of what you're trying to do. It includes the mood and the customer service and the friendliness, helpfulness toward others, and all that kind of stuff, and get that bar set where you want it right in the get-go before they become sort of, well, I got this now, I really don't need it. So if you notice at Springfield, I'll use that as an example again, this is such a good group of people that they're all willing to volunteer to help somebody else without even asking. I mean, I think you guys have witnessed. If you didn't, it's a shame, because you can actually see a staff that is such a good staff that will volunteer to help each other without even being asked. And yeah, it seems normal, but it's very abnormal in the workplace. There's very little drama up there, and this is mostly a result of hiring right in the first place, but it's also a result of initial training. He gets most of the credit for that, at least in the exam rooms. But we've also taught Chrissy how to train and Nikki how to train, and so you know, some of the training is training your trainers, and when you get your trainers trained, then you know you don't have to do it all yourself. And I'm going to touch on that a little bit again when we get to delegating. So try to get your training started as soon as you can while they're receptive. You know, you're going to make bad hires. I've done it. I've done it a lot. You try to do everything you can to eliminate them, but sometimes you just make a bad hire. And the best thing to do is to realize that you made a mistake, and it's your fault because you're the one that picked them, and you did not pick up the red flags or whatever it is that you now realize makes them not a good pick for your team. And the best thing to do is not try to make this person into something that they're not, because you might as well beat your head against the wall. You hardly ever get a chance to, although young managers will try. They will give people second chances and third chances, and they'll feel sorry for them and their personal situation and the family situation or whatever. And, you know, you really should give them, I don't know, if it's 90 days or, I don't know, Cookie, what do you think? I think you can tell pretty quickly if somebody's a good player or not.
Probably 30 days. If somebody is not working out by the 30 days, if not before, we try to cut our losses.
And this is a difficult thing to teach your people. So we're going to talk in a few minutes about delegating. You probably already heard about that, but you need to hear it about 20,000 more times before you can really master it. But you need to teach your people to learn the skills that you guys are going to learn from us. So, you know, recruiting, interviewing, hiring, all that stuff. And it's a real uphill battle teaching somebody to cut somebody loose. I mean, that's a hard thing for most people to master. It's a particularly hard task for people that work for you, because you select it for people with good attitudes and forgiving and all the positive things, and they're usually people that have a lot of patience, which you want, but you know, you cannot continue to carry somebody when you know in your heart that they're not going to work out. I've said to some of our managers before, they usually push back, but we're not in the business of rehabilitating people. We're in the business of delivering top-notch customer service, done their medicine, and you can't do that without a real positive workplace. And that means, you know, eliminating the negatives. There's a really good football coach. His name's escaping me right now, but somebody asked him, how do you, what?
Lou Holtz.
Yeah, Lou Holtz. So Lou Holtz was the coach of Notre Dame's championship team, and they asked Lou one day, how do you motivate them? So tell me, Joey.
You find people who don't need motivation.
Yeah. You hire people that don't need motivating, and you eliminate those that need it. And I know that's cold. You're running businesses, you're going to have, you know, $1 million invested in these things, and you cannot let that business depend on, you know, some individual that works for you in whatever capacity that can't control their emotions or is delivering customer service that depends on the mood of the day or whatever. So I know it sounds cold, and it is, but it's a business, and it's hard to master, and that is that if you can't motivate somebody, then just eliminate them and find somebody else. There's people out there that want to work in our places, and if you build the right culture, they'll want to work in your places. And if somebody doesn't get it, or if somebody's taking it for granted, help them find another job so you can get somebody else in on the thought. Questions, comments?
Pretty straightforward.
Yeah, it's obvious. I thought somebody said it's obvious stuff, and most of the stuff is obvious, but it's really hard to master. It gets our nature.
I have a quick comment or question. Can
Yeah,
everybody
please.
hear me?
Uh-oh.
So I know right now at Blue Ash, we're training 2 new people, and I've just kind of noticed some of the interactions between them and the new staff. I guess what I want to ask is kind of how do you prepare the old staff, and how do you open them up to receiving the new staff? Because I feel like there are some people who like one of the new staff, and there are some people who don't. And do you just give that time to work itself out and see if it improves, or do you get feedback from the current staff on the other?
Rick, you want to start with that? You've got a lot of experience with training and working people into the system. You want to handle this?
Yeah, I think so. I think some of that is up to the manager, and hopefully the manager is noticing the same thing. You do have to give the current staff a little time to get used to somebody. I mean, everybody's personalities are different, but you can't have you can't create the culture where someone is verbalizing that they don't like somebody. So I think you have to talk to the staff at that point. I think you have to talk to the new person as well. You have to really be in tune to your staff so that you can see, you know, what don't they like about this person. You know, is this person rubbing everybody wrong, not just the person who's vocalizing it. So I think, you know, you as an owner and the manager has to really be in tune to that. I do think if you can include the staff in the training of that person, that they're much more invested and that they will accept that person a lot easier. If you have somebody outside of your staff training, they just don't develop the attachment to the new staff member. They don't own that new staff member's training, I think. So I think the more involved you can get your current staff with the new staff, I think that's the best way. Does that make sense?
Yep, and I've seen you guys do that, so that sounds great.
You know, one of the things that we really insist on is that if somebody has a problem with whatever, then, I mean, we go over this over and over and over, and that is if you have a problem with whatever's going on at work, then don't talk about it with your coworkers, because then it just becomes their problem, and it becomes something that drags them down into it, and they can't fix your problem anyway. So, you know, if you have a problem and you need to teach your staff that if they have a problem, don't bitch and moan about it. Come to you, because you're the person that's running the business. You're the person that can fix that problem. It's human nature to talk and bitch and moan and, you know, the old, you know, around the water cooler stuff, but you really have to keep a lid on that. You know, we had a little bit of that in Blue Ash, you know, let's be honest. And so, you know, we sat down with some people and sort of cleared the air a little bit and said, you know, these are kind of the rules of the game. And I'm sure we'll need to do it again. I doubt that one sit down, one meeting is going to do the job. I mean, it's probably already slipping back. I don't know. And eventually, you know, you might come to the conclusion that this is not a fixable problem, and that person needs to be replaced. And so now, especially Morgan, can see how difficult a decision that is. because it's not all black and white. It's not all as clean cut as that. And, there's people that have great qualities, but, we sort of look for the, the whole package, so to speak. So most people that will come to work for you are not self-starters. So that means they have to be managed. So I raised my kids to be self-starting individuals, and you all are. Everybody that's tuned into this thing, you guys are all self-starters. So, what I told my kids is, congratulations. Now you get to manage everybody else. And that's the facts. And if you find somebody that's a self-starter that doesn't need to be managed, guess what? You got your manager. That's a person who you teach how to manage because they don't have to be managed. I had a client one time when I was working at Blue Ash a lot, and he was an executive with one of the banks in town, and we were just talking about this, and he said that somebody asked him, what's the biggest key to management? And his answer was really simple: hire people that don't need to be managed. And there are people that don't need to be managed that you can afford. They don't all need to come in and command an executive salary. There's lots of really good people that are affordable that you can put on the payroll. And I think, what we have where you guys are working, you can see those good people in action. And, these guys are not making, doctor salaries or whatever. These are all good people. They're all self-starters. Do they need to be managed? Yeah, they need to be managed every day, but they're not, sucking more than their share of the energy out of the place. So go back to where I started with, you got 100 employees, each person is only entitled to 1/100th of my aggravation. And if I have somebody that's, I always have to address an issue with this one individual, much more so than anybody else. That's a huge red flag. And so you just have to sort of recognize that. But I guess one of the things that I've learned, and I think that everybody that's worked for me has learned, is that you cannot just say something once and have them get it. It's a constant effort. The people that you say something once to, those are the Cookies, Joeys, the Samanthas, the Dawns, and the doctors that have been here to the point that, I don't have to worry about it. They get it. You say something once and they got it and they run with it. But there's a lot of other people that need to be constantly reminded on what to do. Along those same lines, but a little bit of a tangent is, I don't know if you guys have noticed, but we have checklists for everything. And this is the only place that I've ever worked with that had checklists before. So this was an original thing of mine, and it just came to me one day traveling, and we don't do a whole lot of traveling, but we were traveling, and the pilot has a checklist that they go over before every single flight. And the pilot's a pretty respected, well-paid individual, and if it's important enough that they have to go through a checklist so that they don't forget something, then that's something that I thought that we could use in our operations, and so it keeps people from forgetting the obvious things. And then of course you have to instill rules about the checklists. You're not allowed to check it off if you didn't do it. You're not allowed to check it off if someone else wanted you to do it or whatever. I mean, if there's a way to break a rule, your staff will figure out how to do it. But checklists are a huge thing. We had a new manager at Springfield one time. She no longer works there, so we could talk about it. And I wasn't up there every day. And so I don't know how we first learned about it, but their inventory was way out of whack. I mean, they were running out of stuff constantly, and it was a mess. And so I went up there and I said, so let me see how you're doing things. You know, where are your min-max levels? Where are your reorder points? Where are all these things that we figured out and put into place? And the answer was, well, we don't use those anymore. And I went, why not? Well, we do things different up here. Oh, so how's that working for you? So, you know, they get away from the things that work, the simple little checklist, the simple little min-max order points. You know, we're down to 2, order 4. They quit using those because they thought they were smarter than us, and you know, they didn't think they needed those, and lo and behold, their inventory got out of whack. So a lot of the stuff that you guys are learning, you're basically learning by example of the systems that we've put into place. You know, the way we use estimates, the way we use our release forms, the way we use our wellness plans, the way we use our checklists. You know, I was talking the other day about, you know, how we came about with making e-collars mandatory on almost every surgery. And if you weren't in that conversation, I'll go over that again. Zach, are you still here? I can't see your picture.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I was having some technical issues here, but I'm still on the conference call. I just can't see you, and I can see the like the PowerPoint, but I can't see you guys anymore.
Okay. Well, as long as you can hear it. So
yeah.
So the story of the e-collar, again, simple thing, but that stupid e-collar has made me thousands of dollars. And so before the e-collar, became a mandatory part of the estimate, we would send animals home from surgery, and we would, you know, tell them to keep them quiet and don't let them lick and blah, 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 like everybody else does. And then they wouldn't comply, and the animals would come back, and they would swear, there he is, they would swear up and down, see it, Zach, they would swear up and down that really she doesn't look at her decision. And we knew they did, you know, because we've been doing this forever, and we knew they did, but it was a constant battle, and in some cases, you know, they would chew the stitches out, and then the client would try to convince us that the stitches came out on their own. And, you know, I just got tired of fighting this over and over again, and I got tired of resuturing animals for free because I was sort of forced into that position, you know, either you do it for free or you're going to lose a client, you know, that kind of decision. And so I got really tired of that. And so there's a problem, and, you know, we're all problem solvers. So, you know, you take that lemon and you turn it into lemonade. So now everybody that goes home from a spay or whatever, they have to buy an e-collar. And it eliminated all of those redos. It saved all the money and all the aggravation, almost all of it. And lo and behold, we make money on e-collars. I mean, it's simple, but, you know, thousands of dollars swing one way versus the other. Our little fecalizers, little things. How many times did we tell people to bring in a stool sample and they would forget? So, okay, well, we're going to charge you for it on the way out the door, and we're going to give you a container that makes it easy for you to bring. And that way, if you don't bring it in, we don't care because you already paid for it, and now the burden is on you instead of on us. I personally don't like a fecal loop, but, you know, you guys can do whatever you want. But that was, you know, that was my solution with how can we run more fecals when clients are reluctant to bring it in? Well, we'll charge them for it when they come in, and they can just drop it off. We put a label on it. It's prepaid. The label identifies it as belonging to them. They can just drop it off at the front door when we're closed or whatever. We've usually got a mailbox out there somewhere. And it's already paid for, so we don't have to play the game of, oh, here, Dr. Jenny wanted me to bring a sample of Fido's stool. Here it is. And then the front desk is in the awkward position of saying, now you owe me $12 or whatever it is. And so we did that up front and then immediately removed that whole thing. Our fecal compliance went to where it is today. It's still not as good as it should be, but it's so much better than it was before. Little simple thing. Okay, delegating. It's one of the most important management tools that I've learned. Nobody taught it to me. I've worked with businesses that literally do millions of dollars in volume, and they don't know how to delegate. And I don't know how they work. I just don't know how anybody can run a business without learning how to delegate. So I'm going to take a little break here and grab a drink. So why is delegating so important? Why is this such a big deal to me?
Lets you better focus your attention if you can delegate certain tasks so you're not bogged down with like menial day-to-day things, and you can focus on bigger issues that need your attention.
Yep. That's part of it, Jenny. What else?
Also makes other people feel invested in the business if you give them more responsibility.
Yep. Rachel, not to pick on you, but did they talk about delegating at all in the business class?
Briefly. It wasn't talked about a lot.
Yeah. I mean, I think this is probably the most important skill, with the exception of owning your people skills and your hiring skills. I think this is probably the most important thing that I have to pass on to you. And that's huge. So in my mind, delegating allows me to clone myself, duplicate myself infinitely. So it's an unlimited return on your investment, right? So I learn how to delegate. I teach Cookie how to delegate. I teach Joey how to delegate. They, in turn, teach Samantha, Jessica Gardner, all these other people. And now all of a sudden, you know, there's little mini versions of me running whatever it is that they're doing all over the place. And you can't do that. You can't be in all places at one time. And so in order to build a staff, unless you want, you know, 20 or 30 people coming to you all day long with different problems, you have to develop a management level. And one of the first and most important things that they need to learn is to learn how to delegate. So you delegate whenever there is a task that you can delegate. So one of the first things I told Tiffany when we named her manager at Springfield, because she's a new manager. Tiffany is a great person, but managing is new. And I said, whenever I give you a task or Cookie gives you a task, first thing you should think of is not, you know, doing this task, but who can I give this to? Who else in my staff can I teach and show how to do this so that they can do it? And then, like Jenny said, it frees me up to do something else. So, you know, we delegate different parts of the manager's job to different staff members so that managers can do what they do best. And I want my managers to think and be able to use their ability to make decisions. I don't want my managers in a back room placing orders, you know, calculating wellness plan payments, doing what I call clerk type stuff. I can pay somebody a lot lower wage in order to count and order and do stuff like that. I can't find managers that are able to make good decisions, how to handle people, and it's, you know, it's all people business, how to handle their staff, how to handle clients, how to respond to complaints, you know, how to make good decisions about everything that goes on in the course of a small business day. So you don't want your managers to be stuck in a back room somewhere doing clerk-type activities. We still have that a little bit. We still fight it, but we fight it all the time, and some managers get it better than others. So basically, you can delegate anything that they can do. So you can't delegate your surgeries, and you can't delegate your internal medicine cases, but you can definitely delegate a lot of the administrative type stuff that all businesses have. So here's the steps. Really simple stuff, but trust me, there's companies out there that don't know how to do this. Obviously, make sure the person you're delegating it to can do the job. So that's why you can't delegate surgeries, right? They're not capable of doing the job. Second step is describe the task exactly as you want it performed. Make sure they understand it. Make sure they're capable of it from step one, and tell them explicitly how you want this done. And I don't have it on here, but you should also give them a time frame. Okay, so here's what I want you to do, and I want you to do it in this manner. Step three is you give it to them, and this is where most people stop. They say, okay, I've given Susie this task, and now I can go about my business. But that's where it breaks down in most cases. So this is sort of where the rubber meets the road. So shortly after you give them the task, you check in and make sure they're performing it right. So those of you that have done surgery under my watch, you've probably seen that I'm not in there, watching your every move. I basically ask if you're capable of doing this surgery, and then I get you started, and then I step out of the room. And then I come back in. I don't wait until the surgery's done and find out that you did it wrong. I come in shortly after you start, and if if we need to redirect somebody, whether it's doing a surgery or counting inventory things or restacking the dog food or whatever it is, you just gently redirect them back on task. Praise them for what they're doing so far, and say maybe a suggestion is, I think maybe I'd like to do it this way instead of what you're doing it. And then obviously, praise them if they're doing it right. So then at the end of that, at the end of the task, when it's done and they've said it's finished, you praise them. Simple. But it doesn't get done in the real world. So here's an example of poor delegating, which I've used over and over again, but you guys haven't heard this story. And as you all know by now, I'm full of stories. So I have a manager at Fairfield, and I'm driving by in my car. Building's just been built. We have new grass seed planted, and it's hot July. The ground is dry, and my new grass that I've put all this money in and effort in to get it coming out of the ground is going to burn out if we don't water it. So I tell somebody that's in a management position, I need you to get a sprinkle on that, and I need you to make sure that the whole front yard is watered. And since I know a little bit about growing grass, I want you to move it every 20 or 30 minutes so that we don't have all this runoff. And that's pretty simple. I mean, how much more simpler can watering the grass be, right? So I'm in my car. I'm out probably in the forest park or something at this time, and I come back, and it's like an hour and a half later, and the damn sprinkler's in the same spot. And this is a management level person. So, number one, I didn't do it right because I didn't check on them in 20 or 30 minutes. So that's partially my fault. But I asked the person, I go, what happened? And the response was, well, I told Frank to do this. And I go, well, I don't really care who you told. I gave the job to you. And this person didn't delegate it properly. she just passed the buck on to somebody else, gave them the job, and that person failed. And so when you delegate it, you never really lose responsibility for it. So, you know, simple thing is, you know, you guys are all responsible. All the doctors are responsible for all the charges that go onto the chart. You can delegate that to our staff members. They know how to put charges on, but you never lose the responsibility for that. So if they make an error, it's on you. And same thing when you have your staff, you can delegate, but ultimately the end result is yours. And if they drop the ball, it's really on you. So that's an example of a really simple task that you would think, how can anybody screw it up? And they screwed it up. And that was my first sort of red flag that maybe this person shouldn't be a manager because they don't get it. So when you have a new relationship with a manager or a technician or whatever, it's always a good idea to periodically check in on them and make sure things are going right. But then once you have good people, you don't have to check with them anymore. I mean, I don't have to follow around Chrissy and make sure she's doing her job, right? She gets it. She's a valuable staff member. We were talking about her this morning, how valuable she is. I don't spend any energy making sure Chrissy's doing her job. I don't spend any energy making sure Cookie's doing her job or Joey's doing their job. I don't worry about that at all. But unfortunately, they've got the responsibility of checking in on the people beneath them, so to speak, to make sure they're doing their job. And the newer a manager is, the more supervision they require. You don't have to hover over them, but you can't really turn them completely loose until you have really a lot of faith in them. Joey or Cookie, jump in here. I'm going to take a drink. Any comments? Questions? Simple, obvious.
Well,
it's not difficult.
Zach kind of saw that a little bit here at Fairfield with the doctors delegating to the technicians, and my thing to the doctors were that, you know, the doctors are my responsibility, but the technicians, whatever they delegate to the technicians is their responsibility. So we kind of had that situation. I know we've had it everywhere, but you're right, and absolutely, I think the biggest thing to come out of this is that it is still always your responsibility, no matter who you delegate it to. It still comes back to the way that you manage that responsibility. Joey, you have anything?
No, I don't have anything else.
This is really so obvious, but it is so often done wrong. It just staggers me how poorly we know how to delegate in business. The guy who built my house has a reputation of building big, expensive houses all over Cincinnati. Cincinnati has a home show every year called Homerama. And what they do is they feature all the latest in building techniques and gadgets and theater rooms and, you know, whatever it is that is the trend. And these are big, expensive houses, and they build them all in a really small space, like 1 or 2 streets. And people that are, you know, trying to get ideas in order to incorporate it into their house will pay their money and they'll tour all these houses. And it's a bit of a competition for different things. The landscapers all get involved, and they have awards for best landscape and best this and best that. So you would think people that build $1 million houses end up would be good delegators, and that's just not true. So our builder was one of those guys, and unfortunately for him, we lived next door on the farm, and so I was over at our home site every day. And sometimes I'd stop before I would go to work. And I was forever calling the builder and saying, I thought the carpenters were supposed to be here today. Yeah, they are. I go, well, they're not here. oh, well, I told Scott, and Scott's supposed to have them here, so I guess I'll call Scott. And, you know, after a while, you know, I got to feel like I was the one running the job, because the builder basically had a job site manager that didn't know how to delegate. So he needs to be there to make sure the carpenters are there or the plumbers are there or whoever. And if they're not there, get them there. It's not me, the customer. It's not my job to do that. And I actually was in a position that I was sort of forced to teach the guy that builds all these fancy houses how to delegate properly, because, and unfortunately, this is kind of rampant in the building business, is that, you know, they're good technically at what they do. And I think this talks about this in a book called E-Myth, where, you know, you're good at what you do, you're a good widget maker, so now you're going to go into the widget business, and now you're going to hire other people to make widgets, and so now all of a sudden everything is failing, because you're good at your own individual skill, but you're not good at building a business or managing other people. And as a result of that whole home building experience, overall, even though we ended up with a great house, the experience was really negative, because it took way longer than it should have, and I was the one that I felt like I was doing their job for them, making sure that people showed up on time and so on and so forth. We already covered. By the time you get to the end, it should be done right. If it's not, it's really your responsibility. And if you do it right, make sure that you praise them for it. So here's the rhetorical question, right? So how does this compare to how you've been taught in school and in life? And I venture to say that when I was in school, this isn't the way I was taught. I mean, I was taught under pressure and, you know, fear of failure and, you know, trying to keep up with everybody else and not a whole lot of pop. That's what I was taught. I don't know about you guys, but I know that as recently as when DJ did his residency, that's how he was taught. He was taught in a very negative environment. You know, find somebody or wait for somebody to screw up and then lay into them, right? So that's exactly what is the opposite of what you should do. In this scenario, when you delegate in this manner, you aren't giving them many opportunities to screw up. And it's sort of like house training a dog. So when I tell people how to house train a dog, I tell them that the name of the game is to get them outside so many times that they don't have many opportunities to screw up and go in the house. So I tell them, you know, set a timer and take that dog outside every 45 minutes. And if they don't go, bring them back inside and watch them, because sometimes, you know, we all know that going outside for a dog is a stimulus for them to go. But the whole, in my mind, is to catch the individual doing it right, praise them for it, and eliminate the chances of them doing things wrong. Because if you reinforce the negative behavior, you're going to get more negative behavior. That might be a slide coming up here, I'm not sure, but before we get to Uncle Frank, one of the other big keys to management is that, and you've probably heard me say this before, and that is behavior that gets rewarded gets repeated. So dog goes outside, he's in the grass, that's where you want him to go. You reward him, he's going to go, oh, this is what she wants. If I do this, I get a cheese ball. And they will repeat that behavior. You can teach intricate, really intricate things to animals by simply rewarding the behavior that you want. And the sad fact is, we're all animals. You can change the behavior of your staff, your clients, your dogs, your boss. Behavior that gets rewarded gets repeated. I mean, I'm going to tell you that 20 more times before this internship is over, and I mean that's a big thing of mine. You want to catch them doing something right, reward it, get more of it. So what happened? Yeah.
Sorry, I was just going to add something to that if you don't mind.
Yeah.
I think delegating too is a way for you guys to be able to see what your staff can do. If you delegate a task to somebody, especially if it's an important task and they do a great job, you might be able to identify a leader for later. So I think just being able to give those tasks out and see how the staff member does is a good way for you to be able to judge what kind of staff member you're going to end up with.
Yeah, totally agree. You're going to be able to find out who's got the chops and who doesn't. No question. This is huge. This is, I mean, I know this is simple, but it's not easy. There's a big difference. Okay, so, go ahead. Who knows the story of Uncle Frank? Nobody's heard this. Morgan, Rachel, okay. So, I had a great Uncle Frank, and he was getting up in years, and his brain was slipping, and my dad and I had to take him away from his, you know, little nursing home place. We took him into the hospital. I forget what it was about, but in the middle of all this, the doctor comes over, and Frank says, "Oh, I should have just let Dave take care of me. He's smart. He's in there, and he could probably do your job better than you." And I'm like, "Oh, Frank, please, you know, don't go there." So what happened was a really important lesson to me, and I passed it on, is that the doctor looked at me and said, "Oh, well, so here's what we're doing." And he actually went over my head with the language of what he was doing, because he was talking about brain stuff. And, you know, we don't get a whole lot of brain stuff in veterinary medicine. But what happened was, you know, I sort of just nodded my head like I knew what he was talking about. And that's kind of what we all do, right? We nod our head and, you know, we go, okay. But what it also does is it stops communication, because you don't want to be embarrassed in front of this knowledgeable individual with what you don't know. So what I took from that is that it's a little gimmick that I use when your client is a nurse or an MD or a technician or even a breeder, because, you know, they know all the answers, and you'll have clients that come to you and they'll be really resistant to what you have to say, because they've already made up their mind that they're smarter than you. And because they're a nurse, they know all about this. And so if you feel like you're not getting, you're just not listening, what you do is you Uncle Frank them. And so what you do is you take Larry, and you take the discussions a couple of clicks above their level of understanding. And they will do what I did, and that is they'll nod their head like they understand, and they won't, but it'll shut them up, and it will stop them from challenging your position and your knowledge and your authority. And we all know that MDs are really smart at what they do, but they don't know squat about veterinary medicine. And the really smart ones will admit that up front. The ones that are insecure, you know, they'll want to tell you how smart they are, and, you know, they've got this degree and that degree or whatever. And so, you know, you get fear and say, you know, they clearly know how to do this. If you want to put them in their place, then all you have to do is say something along the lines of, "You're a doctor, so as you know, da, 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 da," and you talk to them in a language that they don't understand. And it's easy to do, because they don't know our business. And it shut them up immediately. Works great on nurses. Because they are frequent offenders. Dr. Monica came running to me one day when she did her first did this the first time, and she goes, "Dave, I just Uncle Frank the guy. It was great. It was awesome." And so that's what happened. So I hope that wherever you guys go, Uncle Frank's legacy will follow you, and we'll be an Uncle Frank all around the country. All right, Joe, you still there?
Yep.
Okay. You want to do this one? Try to talk.
No.
All right, so here's the way I feel sometimes about my business. So what is your most valuable asset? Your car, your home, the money in your wallet, your credit card, whatever. So, I don't know, what do you own that's physical that is really important and valuable to you?
You mean things other than?
Yeah, I mean, it's a rhetorical question, but, let's say you go out and you paid $50,000 for this new car. And it's your first new car, and you're really, really proud of it. And, you've got all the radio stations programmed to the stations that you like, and you've got the mirrors where you want them, and, you got the seat adjusted just right, and it's just right. And you love this new car. And then somebody borrows it from you. And how do you expect it to be returned? Exactly the way they got it, right? You want exactly. You don't even want to know that they used it. But what if they brought it back and they reprogrammed the radio station? Or the mirrors were out of whack. Or you had to, readjust the seat, or who knows, maybe they even scratched it or dented it. Well, my car is a $10 million yacht. My business is my yacht. So I let all of these people, all my employees, you guys and all the other doctors, I let you have the keys to my yacht, and I expect it to be kept in the same condition that I loaned it out. That's kind of the way I feel about this. And when you guys had your own business, I think you're probably going to feel the same way. I mean, even something as simple as, I had an individual that as soon as I left Blue Ash, she got in my office chair, and, she changed the height of the chair, whatever. She made it all just for her. And I'd come back to my office, and things were out of whack. And I don't know. I just think this is an analogy that that I try to instill in people, that don't go redoing how we keep track of our inventory to suit you, like what happened in Springfield. And don't go making changes to our checklists. And no, you can't use the wellness plan any way you want to. It's designed that way for a purpose. And don't give a different vaccination protocol than we do, because this is what works for us, and this is my brand new car, and you're not allowed to change it. So, I don't want to lecture on this, but I think you guys get the idea. This is the most valuable possession that I have. Obviously, I have non-physical things, people and whatever are more important, but this business is a possession that's worth a lot of money. And even when it was only worth $150,000, I didn't want anybody screwing with it. So I was really careful about that, and I've tried to, maintain the maintain that mindset and try to teach that to people that work for me. So, when you're business owners, you want to make sure that they understand that they can't just go off the rails and start doing what they want. They can't start innovating and doing whatever they want. You've got systems in place that you put in place because of years of trial and error, or for whatever reasons, they're your systems, it's your practice, and you can't have a bunch of freelancers out there doing their own thing. So I don't know how much time we were supposed to have. Cookie, are we good to stop
Until 3. We can't. We don't have to. We've got till 3 o'clock. It's up to you.
All right. So these are just some things that we can touch on if we have time. We can hold off on these later. Just some of my little things. As a business owner, you actually get to pick who your clients are. We can talk about that a little bit. You know, whoever coined the phrase "it never hurts to ask" is a moron. It does hurt to ask. The questions that you ask are really telling about who you are. Rachel and Morgan and I were talking about interviewing at Springfield and what I look for when I interview, and I can tell probably more about the questions that they ask me rather than the answers that they give me to my questions. So what's that mean in a practical standpoint? Well, let's say you're interviewing a new associate, and you know you're droning on, talking like I have been for the last hour, and you're going on and on and on, and talking about all the great things that your practice has to offer, and you've got digital this and digital that, and you get a great staff and a great culture. And so the first thing they ask is, so how many weeks vacation do I get? So, I mean, that's an inappropriate question right out of the box, right? I think everybody would agree with that. And so, you know, a lot of times they'll ask an inappropriate question, and then they'll follow it with, it never hurts to ask, right? Well, yeah, it does, because you just told me what kind of person you are and what your priorities are. And, you know, a smarter question, you know, I don't know, might be, tell me about your staff, or, you know, how did you build this business, or what is your background, or what are your thoughts on this, or what are your thoughts on that? So that's all I mean by that. But there are some really stupid questions out there, and Joey and I have run across this so many times it's not even funny, and whoever said it never hurts to ask is just a moron, because you can ask the wrong question, and they will ask you wrong questions, and that's really telling. So let's go back up to the other one. So you actually get to pick your clients when you have your own practice. So what's that mean? Let me just throw that out. How do you guys think you get to pick your clients?
By where you build your practice, you can kind of look at the socioeconomics of that area, and that'll kind of give you some indication of what they're going to be willing to spend and what they're going to be willing to do.
Yep.
I think the way you conduct your exams and the way you treat your clients, some people want that really in-depth conversation with the doctor and the family feel with the receptionist, and some people just want to get in, get their answer, and get back out.
Yep.
You have
You can
the
also
ability
fire
to,
your clients.
yeah.
Instead of
sorry, go ahead.
Thing with what Jenny was saying with where you build, it's also how you price things.
Yep. Really true.
And then what you have to offer.
Go ahead, Jenny. I'm sorry.
It is what you have to offer. Are you just going to do vaccines, or are you going to recommend annual blood work, and are you going to have X-ray available and ultrasound, and really believe that it's good medicine to push that, or are you going to be, oh, just wait and observe? I think that tells you, kind of helps you pick your clients as well.
Yeah, you sort of get what you deserve. So, you know, a lot of our staff members, at least years ago, were focused on the prices that we charged, because especially at the front desk, they would get the change this. They would get the heat from, I can't believe you charge this much. And so then they would come to me and Cookie and Joey or whoever, and they would say, you know, our prices are too high because we're getting all these complaints. And my response to them is, if we lower our prices, we'll get more complaints. What's that mean? What do I mean by that?
You lower your prices, you're getting. Go ahead. So you're catering for the people that are searching for the bargain and searching for the lowest price.
Yeah, yeah, and you can never get them low enough, right? I mean, people that go to Walmart are bitching because of price, you know, things are too expensive. People that are looking for quality are looking for quality, and, you know, price is always a factor, but you don't want people coming to you because you're the cheapest. You just don't want that. If they're coming to you because you're the cheapest, you need to raise your fee. And we'll talk more about fees, but if your clients aren't complaining about your fees, then you need to raise them. Because a certain amount of complaining is normal, and you know, if they're not complaining, you know, what they're really thinking is, wow, I thought this was going to be a lot more expensive than what it is. So, you know, from a business person, that means there's a lot of room left in there for you to increase your profits by raising your fees. And when you raise your fees, you automatically eliminate some of the complainers because they just choose to go somewhere else. They go somewhere because it's cheap. And we'll probably talk about this would be a better discussion for when we're all together in one room when it's not so stilted. But, you know, Banfield sort of, initially at least, they sort of marketed themselves as less expensive, but they're really not. They're really not that less expensive, but they, being smart business people, they sort of marketed it that way. And you will see in your practice, if you lose a client to Banfield, you really didn't establish a connection with them, and they are a Banfield sort of a client. Not to pick on Banfield, but why not? And you know, so they have not learned the value of what you have to offer. So if all they see is the price, then that means, you know, you have not done a very good job of selling yourself visually and your customer service and the value of your technical skills. You haven't done a very good job of selling as a person. So there's a difference between a commodity and a service. So a commodity is something that is the same thing no matter where you go. So my dad was in the gas station business. I think you all knew that. And so, you know, he had a Ohio station back in the day. Now they're called BPs. But they, you know, they used to try to convince people that their gasoline was better than the gasoline that you bought from Sunoco. And they had additives that they put in their gasoline that prevented fuel line freeze up and all these different things that they come up with. And quite honestly, when I was a kid, I thought, you know, so Ohio gasoline was superior to anybody else's. The reality is that gasoline is a commodity. It doesn't really matter where you buy your gasoline from because it pretty much all comes from the same big tank in Texas somewhere. It's a commodity. You look for the lowest price because it's all the same. So they don't have a value-added gasoline out there other than obviously the premium, the higher octane, and so on and so forth. I mean, if you're talking apples to apples, gasoline is a commodity. You know, and so therefore it can only be judged on price. So some of our products, unfortunately, are commodities. So, you know, Frontline is Frontline from you and Frontline from the online stores and frontline from the, Petcos and all the other things that are out there. So unfortunately, some of the things have to sell have become commodities, which puts a lot of downward price pressure on it, which in turn reduces our profit margin on these things because we've had to price them in a way to stay competitive. And again, pricing is pretty complicated, and it takes a lot of time to be able to master pricing. I mean, you can take a master's class in pricing, and they could talk about pricing for a whole semester. But be that as it may, when things become a commodity or they commoditize something, then it's the same no matter what you get. And there's no profit in commodities. There's minimal, as you've had to reduce it to the lowest common denominator and compete with everybody else on price. On the other hand, if your veterinary hospitals have great customer service, you've invested the time to hire really friendly people up front. Joey's going to talk at some point about the perception of value. And if they perceive that what we have to offer is worth more than the guy down the street, then they're willing to pay more than they would the guy down the street. So you want to structure your business in such a way that you are not a commodity and that you don't compete on price. Unless you want to, and if you want to compete on price, then you really got to get good at it because there's not a whole lot of money. So like grocery stores, here's a perfect example. Grocery stores, a gallon of milk, it really doesn't matter if you get it from Kroger's or whatever. So what has grocery stores gotten into lately that has a higher profit margin? And that is all the other stuff that they're adding to these giant Kroger stores now. So, there's clothes in there, there's jewelry in there, there's perfume, there's books, there's furniture in some of these places. And the reason is there's a high profit margin in these things because they are more unique than a gallon of milk. So they can make more profit because their core business, groceries, has been reduced to a commodity. And so it's the same no matter where you get it. So that's one of the reasons that they're getting involved in those items. They used to say that grocery business, the margins were 1%. I mean, they were that thin. They had to do a whole heck of a lot of volume because they didn't make that much on each individual item, so they had to turn them a lot. And you'll hear probably somewhere along the way about inventory turns, and that's basically how many times you replace your inventory in the course of the year. And that might be something that they'll talk about in business school. We don't worry about it too much here. We just solve our inventory problem by only keeping on hand what we need in order to stay in stock until the next batch gets there. So, I don't want to get off into a tangent, but we don't buy a whole train load and truckload of supplies because they're on sale. It makes more economic sense to buy smaller quantities. Sometimes we sell those things before we even have to pay for them. So if you got 30 days to pay your drug bills and you've already sold it, paid for it, that's really profitable when you do it that way. If you manage your inventory intelligently, you basically sell it before you pay for it in some cases. That's what you try to do. That's what, if you're doing outside reading and you read about manufacturing, when they talk about just-in-time delivery, just-in-time manufacturing, that's what that's all about. And you also reduce the amount of investment that you have in inventory. I think we have, I don't know, Joe, are you still here?
Yeah, I'm here. Yeah, I'm here.
What did you say we have tied up in inventory?
That was hard to kind of look at, but about $50,000 of prescriptions and foods per clinic?
I really thought that was higher, but I'm glad it's not, because that's $50,000 that I have tied up in inventory that I don't have earning interest in a bank account or stock market account somewhere else. So that's money that I've tied up, I put it in a box, I stuck it on the shelf, and I can't do anything with it. If you buy a semi-trailer full of dog food and you got it because, you know, it was on sale, and when you get a little bit more business mindset, you understand the cost of time and the cost of money and the cost of opportunity and all that kind of stuff. But you basically tied up all that money in your inventory and you can't do anything else with it. So it's not earning anything. And what you'd rather have is a small enough dollar value in inventory that you have just enough to get you until you get another shipment. We got off the topic a little bit, but any questions about how to pick your clients? You know, we talked about demographics, you know, where to locate your hospital, how to price your things. You know, if you want to be a high volume, low price, I mean, that's a business model that works. I have a friend that owns what do they call it? Cookie Noah's Ark Animal Club.
Noah's Ark. Yep.
Yeah, and there used to be Coleraine Animal Club here in town, and she's actually a third generation, and it's pretty much the Kmart of veterinary medicine in Cincinnati. And Monica used to work for him. No appointments. I don't think really has anything to do with his pricing model, but no appointments. And they are try to market themselves as the lowest place in town. And you kind of get what you pay for. He's a good guy, and he's actually a pretty smart business person. But we have a totally different approach to the final product. I don't want his clients. His clients would drive me crazy. He can tolerate them, and he's probably the guy that's laughing all the way to the bank. But I would rather personally, and this is all your choice, but I would personally rather have a more educated client, a client that sees the value, is not going to bitch and moan about $1 here or $10 there, and who is coming to me because I'm good, not because I'm cheap. This veterinarian, his name's Mike. Mike and I both do ear. And the people that are looking for a cheap ear crop, they go to Mike. And the people that are looking for one that's good, they go to me. If they know I do it, I don't promote it because of the obvious, social stigma of ear cropping. I don't necessarily need to put that out there, but they find their way to me. He probably does a lot more than I do, and he could get a lot better at it, in my opinion, because he's a pretty decent surgeon, but he chooses not to because he wants in and out of there in 20 minutes because he's got another 30 appointments to see that day, and he works on volume. So it's working for him. He makes a lot of money, but it's not the business model that I personally like, but it's an option. The thing about veterinary medicine is that it's a big enough business, profession, industry, whatever you want to call it, that there's all sorts of niches. You can practice in the niche that you guys are being exposed to right now. You can practice in the niche that Mike practices. You can have a mobile vaccination clinic. You can have a mobile surgery clinic. There's all sorts of ways to do it. You can have boarding. You cannot. You can have grooming. You cannot. You can practice out of a 1,200 square foot lease space like I did at one. 15,000 square foot things that we do now. And when I was younger, I used to look down my nose at people like Mike. In fact, there was a time when I wouldn't even talk to him because I thought he was an embarrassment to the profession. And then I grew up, matured a little bit, and I realized that, it doesn't make him a bad person. He just has chosen a different business model. And that's okay, because there's a clientele out there that demands that business model. I shop at Walmart. That doesn't mean I don't know the difference, but there's a time and a place for that, and there's also, it's a difference between going to McDonald's and going to, I don't know, Ruth's Chris Steakhouse or whatever, high-end restaurant you're familiar with. There's room for all those business models and all those niches, and you can pretty much choose the one you want. I've chosen this one, and I've stuck with this business model all these years, and I've just decided that this is the one I like, and I have just tried to get better and better at running our own business model instead of changing back and forth. Well, we're having a slow month, our price is too high, what's going on, and you panic and you start to do a lot of changes in how you approach things and what you do. So, this is not the only way out there to practice. I think you guys all know that, but what works best for me. If we convince you that this is close to the one that works best for you, then those are the practices that we'll try to find. When I bought Springfield, I misjudged it because I happen to know the competitor down the street, Dana King. I know he's not a very good veterinarian. But I didn't know the guy that I bought the Springfield practice from, and I thought he was a good veterinarian. And then this is not really smart of me, but hopefully I now know how to prevent it from happening to you guys. So we bought the practice, and we were banging our heads against the price wall all the time, and the better clients in Springfield were going down the street, and we were getting the price-conscious people. And it's been a slow battle to change that. We're still changing it. We have really good clients come to Springfield, but we still have a lot of price-conscious people. And it's hard to change that. In my case, it's been hard for me to change that because we've had personnel issues. We've had doctors that haven't stayed for very long, and so lack of continuity has sort of gotten in the way of us being a really high-quality place. And clients, that's one of the clients' things that they judge us by, and so we've sort of struggled with pushing that practice up on the economic scale. It's a lot better. I didn't know it when I bought it, but the guy that I bought it from told his staff members that if I'm in this exam room for longer than 7 minutes, you need to knock on door and need me so I can get out of the exam room. That was the model that he was working under. Obviously, that's not what we do, but that's the clientele that I bought, and then trying to convert them to, what I consider animal care center clients was a bit of a struggle. We're still struggling with it. I mean, we all know that Springfield's economically challenged compared to the Cincinnati practices, and the fees reflect that. But if I could solve a couple of things with that practice could overtake the other practice in volume. I think we already overtake them in quality, but our clients don't really know it yet. And there's a lot of clients that are going down the street, and they're just assuming that better practice. So when I started in Fairfield, I was in little bitty. I don't know if everybody's seen that place where I worked, but it was a little bitty house, and the practice in town was Mount Pleasant Animal Hospital. It was a 3-doctor practice. I don't know, was it an all-home practice? Could be. It seems like it was. But,
it wasn't.
Yeah. But, everybody that was anybody in Fairfield went to that practice. We really had to fight an uphill battle to establish our clientele. when I opened, I did not come in with lower prices than them. I wanted to do it in a manner that I didn't want to be the cheapest guy in town. That's not the guy they wanted to be. So I sort of met that head on with price, and I just tried my best to build a business that was, based on the qualities that I wanted to have. One of those happened to be that nobody was taking emergencies. And so, I first started out, I didn't have any clients, and I saw emergency cases. And a lot of the clients that I saw emergencies would stay with me because their veterinarian didn't care enough to see them after hours. That's the way it was back in those days. There were no emergency clients. So a lot of our practice stimulus in the beginning was by emergencies. And I really tried to deliver a really good product. And when I say that, I mean across the board. Quality medicine, quality surgery, quality customer service. So I hired Cookie. She took the service thing. I sort of have to worry about that. Moreover, I had to work on developing my own customer service skills, my own exam fluent personality, and overcome a lot of introverted tendencies that I had. And I had to really work on that. But Mount Pleasant is still a doctor hospital. It's no longer the place. We are what we are in Fairfield, and sort of, that's an example of a success story where we were able to overcome what was perceived as better practice. Part of that was marketing, because it was hard to do because I was in that little building, which didn't exactly scream quality, established veterinary medicine. It was a little house. And I fought that and fought that and fought that. And it's amazing when you have a impressive building, impressive facility, people make judgments when they see the building before they even meet the doctor. So I've been in my buildings when I've had people walk in the door, look around, and they go, I'm going to transfer my records here. They've never even met the doctor. It's just stupid on their part, but I'll gladly take them. But our buildings are tools, as well as, everything else that we deliver. I'm going to stop. Couple or three. There's some other stuff. There's lots. So be thinking about this sort of soft, obvious, easy stuff that is the kind of thing that, in my opinion, is going to, keep you from going crazy down the road when you have your own staff and encounter a lot of problems you had, growing up. But be thinking about different topics that you want to talk to me about. I personally think this is better than I thought it was going to be.
Me too.
And so we're going to try to do that. And I think there's some stuff that I can just write and send out to you guys. You can, read it on your own, just like our modules or whatever. So I don't know if this is going to be really good for me in the future. It worked better today than I thought it would. We'll just leave it at that.
That's good.
Everybody good?
Yep.
Okay. Well, I hope this is worthwhile. This is really old stuff for me, but I hope it was worthwhile. And it's really, really simple, obvious stuff. Trust me, it's not easy. There's a big difference. Okay, guys, thanks a lot. I got to figure out how to turn this thing off. Yeah, have fun.
Bye. Bye, everybody.
Bye.
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 Bye.